She watched in stunned silence as her fiancé exchanged vows with another woman, laughing like she had never existed. Her heart burned, but she didn't scream or cry. Instead, she smiled. What happened next shocked everyone. She returned not with revenge, but with grace, power, and an unexpected life-changing blessing. For those who have ever been underestimated, humiliated, or overlooked because of who they are, this story will resonate. Viewers are invited to witness a journey of resilience, courage, and unexpected triumph. Stay until the end. The greatest victories are often quiet, graceful, and unforgettable. She had always believed in the kind of love that promised forever, the kind that whispered of safety and partnership, where trust was unshakable and hearts intertwined with unspoken understanding. From the outside, her life seemed ordinary, but to her it had been carefully built, each day layered with hope, each moment invested with unwavering faith in the man she loved. She had imagined the wedding as the beginning of a lifetime, a celebration of a bond she had nurtured despite the subtle doubts cast by his family and friends. Yet, even in those doubts, she had always believed that love could conquer everything, that honesty and loyalty would always prevail. The morning of the wedding had arrived with golden light filtering through the sheer curtains, the air carrying the faint scent of roses and polished wood. She adjusted the delicate straps of her gown, her reflection in the mirror showing a mixture of nervous excitement and quiet confidence. For weeks she had envisioned the ceremony, the moment he would take her hand, the gentle smile he would offer, the whispered vows that would seal their love. Every detail mattered, the way she had chosen her jewelry, the soft, understated elegance of her dress, the subtle warmth of her makeup enhancing the dignity she carried so effortlessly. She had wanted nothing more than to be the woman he saw every day, the one he had promised to honor and cherish, the one he had vowed to build a life with. But the fantasy shattered in an instant. As she entered the grand hall, anticipation swelling in her chest, she saw him, the man she had loved with everything she had, standing at the altar, hand in hand with another woman. The mistress, radiant in her own arrogance, smiled up at him as though the day belonged solely to them, as though the love they had shared, the promises they had whispered in private, had been erased without a trace. Her heart lurched violently, a cocktail of disbelief, grief, and a quiet burning fury she had never expected to feel. Guests whispered around her, faces turned, eyes wide with curiosity or judgment, and she realized, with a cruel sting, that this humiliation was now public. The man she had trusted, the man she had envisioned spending her life with, had chosen betrayal over loyalty, spectacle over integrity. Yet even in that moment of shattering, something remarkable happened. She did not scream, she did not crumble, she did not beg. Her head lifted, her spine straightened, and she allowed herself a smile, not of happiness, but of quiet defiance. The world could see her hurt, but it could not see the strength that was igniting within her. She turned, walked away from the altar that should have been hers, leaving behind the chaos, the laughter, and the pain. Every step she took was a silent promise that she would not let this betrayal define her, that she would rise above the humiliation, and that her life, though seemingly shattered, was only beginning. Her perfect life, the one she had imagined, had crumbled in the blink of an eye. Yet within the ruins, the first spark of transformation flickered. The woman who left that hall was not broken. She was awakening. After leaving the hall, she walked into the cool evening air, the sounds of celebration fading behind her like a distant memory. Her chest tightened with a mix of grief and disbelief, yet beneath the ache, a slow, steady pulse of determination began to emerge. She had been humiliated, betrayed, and underestimated, but she refused to let those moments define her. There was a power in resilience, a quiet, unassuming strength that grew not from confrontation but from perseverance, and she vowed to nurture it. Every step away from the altar was a step toward reclaiming herself, toward building a life on her own terms. The following days were not easy. Friends offered sympathy, colleagues tried to console her, and strangers occasionally stared with curiosity, but she kept her focus inward. She did not indulge in self-pity, she did not broadcast her pain. Instead, she immersed herself in work, in small acts of kindness, and in endeavors that reminded her of her worth. She volunteered at local community initiatives, helped struggling students, and mentored those who had been silenced or underestimated. In her generosity, she discovered a strange alchemy. The more she gave, the stronger she felt. Every act of kindness, every effort to uplift someone else, became a brick in the foundation of her renewed self. At work, she channeled her heartbreak into quiet excellence. Meetings that once felt intimidating now became stages for her intellect, creativity, and poise. She listened more, observed more, and spoke only when her words could cut through doubt like sunlight through clouds. Colleagues began to notice her composure, her calm authority, and her ability to navigate difficult situations with integrity. Even those who had doubted her before now paused, realizing that the woman they had underestimated possessed a subtle, commanding presence. Yet it was not only the external world that she transformed. Internally, she learned to reclaim her narrative. Nights spent replaying the betrayal were gradually replaced by reflection, by planning, and by envisioning a life that belonged entirely to her. She realized that revenge was unnecessary, that proving her worth did not require belittling others, and that dignity could be more powerful than outrage. In every quiet action, in every choice guided by intelligence and grace, she discovered the undeniable truth. Strength was not loud, it was steady, patient, and unyielding. By the end of these weeks, the woman who had walked away from the altar was no longer the same. Her pain had been transformed into purpose, her heartbreak into vision, and her humiliation into a quiet, radiant confidence. While the world had once mocked and dismissed her, it now stood on the periphery of someone extraordinary in the making. And though she did not yet know the full extent of what life had in store, she understood one thing clearly: she was rising, not in spite of what had happened, but because she had chosen to stand tall when the world expected her to fall. Her quiet strength became her shield, her beacon, and her promise to herself, a promise that the next chapter would be written not by betrayal, but by the brilliance of her own unwavering spirit. Life, as she was beginning to understand, had a way of rewarding those who refused to crumble under its weight. Months passed, each day a careful layering of effort, grace, and quiet resilience. She continued to excel in her work, her intellect shining in spaces where others had overlooked her. Her reputation began to ripple outward, subtle yet undeniable, reaching corners of the city she had never imagined. It was during one of these ordinary days in the midst of her composed routines that the unexpected arrived, a figure whose presence would change everything. The billionaire, a man of immense influence and power, noticed her. He was not one to be swayed by appearances or by the superficial charm most wielded to capture attention. He saw instead the quiet confidence she carried, the intelligence that pulsed beneath her calm exterior, and the kindness that manifested in her every action. He approached her, not with fanfare but with measured attention, offering an opportunity few could ever imagine: a partnership, a mentorship, perhaps even a role that would elevate her into circles she had once only observed from afar. At first, she hesitated. She had grown cautious, protective of her heart and her energy, wary of those who might seek to exploit her vulnerability. But there was something different about this proposition. It was genuine, rooted not in manipulation or spectacle, but in recognition of her talent and character. She listened, weighing each word, and slowly realized that this was not merely a chance, it was a lifeline, a bridge to a future that respected her intelligence, her dedication, and her moral compass. The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation, learning, and subtle transformation. She absorbed every lesson, every bit of guidance, not out of desperation but from a desire to rise to the potential the opportunity offered. In meetings, she displayed creativity and strategic thinking that left seasoned executives impressed. In negotiations, she spoke with clarity and authority, commanding respect without ever demanding it. Those who had doubted her before could not help but notice the change, though they did not yet understand its source. Meanwhile, she remained grounded, her heart and mind aligned with the values she had cultivated during the months of quiet struggle. She continued her acts of kindness, mentoring young professionals, supporting her community, and reminding herself daily that success meant more than wealth. It meant impact, integrity, and self-respect. And as the billionaire watched her flourish, he recognized not just a talented partner, but someone extraordinary, someone whose resilience and moral strength amplified her abilities far beyond the ordinary. By the end of this chapter, she had not only secured a remarkable opportunity, but had also transformed into a woman who radiated confidence and influence. She had risen quietly, with no one to witness the depths of her effort, yet she now stood on the threshold of a future where the world could no longer ignore her brilliance. The betrayal that had once shattered her was now a distant memory, replaced by purpose, recognition, and the promise of extraordinary change. Her life was shifting in ways even she could not yet fully grasp, but one thing was certain: the woman who had been underestimated, mocked, and overlooked was now unstoppable. The day of the ex-fiancé's wedding arrived with all the grandeur and fanfare one could imagine: crystal chandeliers gleaming, polished floors reflecting the laughter of guests, and floral arrangements that seemed to celebrate every superficial triumph. But none of it could prepare them for her arrival. She appeared not as the betrayed, trembling woman who had left months ago, but as someone entirely transformed, poised, radiant, and accompanied by a man whose presence commanded respect without a word: the billionaire. The hush that fell over the crowd was immediate and palpable. Conversations halted mid-sentence, champagne glasses froze in mid-air, and even the officiant seemed to falter. All eyes turned toward her as she stepped gracefully onto the marble aisle, her dress elegant but understated, her jewelry carefully chosen to reflect subtle confidence rather than ostentation. Her smile was calm, almost serene, yet it carried the weight of her journey, the months of quiet struggle, of rebuilding herself, and of rising above humiliation. She had come not for revenge, but for acknowledgement, and the power she radiated was undeniable. The mistress standing beside her soon-to-be husband stiffened. Her smile faltered, replaced by the briefest flicker of doubt and panic. The ex-fiancé, once so certain of his superiority and clever manipulation, suddenly seemed small, insignificant even, as if the world had shifted beneath him. He had expected nothing of her in this moment, and yet here she was, glowing with the confidence and success he had ignored, his betrayal now rendered meaningless by the life she had built without him. She approached the couple, her steps measured, her presence commanding attention without aggression. When she spoke, her voice was soft but clear, carrying effortlessly across the hall. She offered a blessing, not of mockery, not of sarcasm, but of genuine goodwill. She wished them happiness, harmony, and understanding, the kind of grace that only someone who has endured deep pain and emerged stronger could embody. In that moment, she revealed a truth far more powerful than revenge. She had transcended the bitterness, and her life was richer for it. The billionaire's hand rested lightly on her back, a silent acknowledgement of her journey and of the extraordinary life they were now embarking on together. He did not need to boast or explain. The room could feel the weight of his recognition. Her transformation was complete, a radiant testament to her resilience and intelligence. The whispers of astonishment that spread through the crowd were testimony to the reversal of power. The one who had been underestimated, mocked, and humiliated had returned, as the one whose presence defined the room. As she turned and walked away, leaving the couple to their vows, the ex-fiancé's face was pale, a mixture of regret, shame, and disbelief. For the first time, he realized that the woman he had scorned possessed a strength he could never possess: quiet dignity, unwavering confidence, and the ability to rise above betrayal with grace. She had arrived not to compete, not to punish, but to embody the triumph of perseverance. The seeds of her quiet strength sown months ago had blossomed spectacularly, and everyone present, whether they admitted it or not, understood that she had won. The wedding, for all its pomp, would long be remembered not for the vows exchanged, but for the woman who returned with nothing but grace, and emerged victorious in the eyes of everyone who witnessed her rise. The moment hung in the air like electricity, thick with anticipation, as she stood at the edge of the wedding hall, her presence impossible to ignore. Every eye turned to her, the whispers, the stares, the faint gasps, all unnoticed by her, for she carried a quiet confidence that demanded respect without a single word. The ex-fiancé, who had once believed himself untouchable, now seemed entirely exposed, his arrogance crumbling under the weight of what he had failed to see. She was no longer the woman he thought he knew. Then came the twist, subtle yet profound. The billionaire, standing beside her with understated elegance, spoke a few words that drew all eyes. He introduced her not merely as a guest, but as a partner, a collaborator, and a force in his own enterprise, a revelation that shifted the entire dynamic of the room. Her journey of resilience, her intelligence, her unyielding integrity had been recognized in the most powerful circles imaginable. This was more than validation. It was a transformation so complete that the ex-fiancé could only stare, paralyzed by the magnitude of what he had lost. As she acknowledged the couple with a graceful nod and a warm, genuine smile, the room seemed to hold its breath. Her blessing was simple yet profound, filled with words that radiated maturity, dignity, and unexpected kindness. She spoke of love, of growth, and of the importance of seeing beyond oneself. There was no malice, no lingering bitterness, only the undeniable aura of someone who had endured the deepest betrayal and emerged stronger, wiser, and infinitely more powerful. The contrast was electric. The man who had wielded control with cruelty now confronted the consequences of underestimating a woman whose strength had quietly flourished outside his vision. Guests, who had arrived expecting a traditional celebration, now witnessed a dramatic reversal of fortune. Their fascination was palpable. Some whispered, some exchanged knowing glances, while others simply stared, caught in the spell of her transformation. The mistress, who had flaunted herself as a prize, recoiled slightly, realizing that her victory was hollow compared to the depth, intelligence, and poise of the woman before her. The ex-fiancé's confusion and shame were unmistakable, etched into his features as he recognized, too late, that true power is not given, it is earned. This revelation did not arrive through confrontation or spectacle, but through the quiet, unshakable truth of her accomplishments and character. The audience, both within the hall and those imagining the scene beyond it, understood that her journey had been more than personal. It was emblematic of a larger lesson, that perseverance, dignity, and unwavering self-respect can transform even the most devastating betrayals into triumph. By the end of the moment, it was clear that the story had shifted irrevocably. She had not only reclaimed her life, but had rewritten the narrative itself. The ex-fiancé had lost more than a partner. He had lost the chance to recognize greatness when it was standing right before him. And as she turned away, her smile lingering, it was not vengeance that carried her. It was the radiant, undeniable power of someone who had risen wholly from heartbreak to destiny, leaving everyone present with a lesson that would resonate far beyond that single day. As the echoes of the wedding ceremony faded into the evening, she stood quietly, observing the room she had once entered as a figure of heartbreak and humiliation. Now she was a vision of triumph and grace, a living testament to resilience, dignity, and the quiet strength that comes from enduring life's harshest betrayals. The transformation was not just visible to those around her, it was palpable in the way she carried herself, in the calm certainty of her posture, and in the serene glow of her expression. Her journey had been long, marked by pain, doubt, and isolation, but it had culminated in a victory far more profound than any public recognition or material success could convey. In those moments of reflection, she understood that true power is rarely loud. It does not announce itself with fury or vindictiveness, but rather grows in silence, nurtured by perseverance, integrity, and purpose. She had spent months rebuilding herself, focusing on the work, the kindness, and the opportunities that others overlooked. In helping others, mentoring those who had been dismissed, and leading with unwavering principle, She had found not only validation but fulfillment. The world had tried to define her worth by the opinions of the arrogant and the deceitful, yet she discovered that self-respect and resilience were far stronger measures of value than any external judgment. The ex-fiancé, now a silent witness to her rise, remained a study in regret. He had believed that betrayal and manipulation could secure his happiness, that he could control the narrative and diminish her significance. Instead, he had inadvertently set the stage for her extraordinary transformation. She did not revel in his failure. She did not need to. Her satisfaction came from something far more lasting, the knowledge that she had remained true to herself, that she had risen without compromising her principles, and that her life now reflected the dignity and intelligence that had always been hers. She thought of the lessons learned along the way, how betrayal, humiliation, and underestimation, while painful, could become catalysts for growth. The strength that emerges from such trials is quiet, but it is undeniable. It shapes character, builds confidence, and cultivates a sense of purpose that no external force can diminish. She had discovered that forgiveness is not a concession to others but a liberation of the self, and that true success is measured not by revenge or spectacle but by the ability to rise above adversity and thrive. As she turned her gaze to the horizon, the city bathed in the soft glow of twilight, she felt a profound sense of completeness. Her journey had been arduous, but it had led to empowerment, recognition, and unexpected opportunity. The moral was clear. Respect is earned through integrity, resilience, and self-belief. Hidden strength often outshines arrogance, and life, in its mysterious ways, rewards those who rise above betrayal with grace and courage. In that moment, she understood that she was not defined by the failures of others, nor by the cruelty she had endured, but by the unwavering power she had discovered within herself. Her story ended not with vengeance, but with wisdom, strength, and the quiet triumph of a woman who had learned that life's greatest victories are earned in silence, radiate in presence, and echo far beyond the moment.